Hey guys out there in YouTube land, it's your VHS Collector Kyle here with another video. Today I figured I'd talk about my top 5 comics. And I mean comic books. And I have my own list, like I always say. I don't like to try to remember it, it messes me up. And sometimes I get the information wrong, so so not very good at remembering. So alright, my top 5 comic books. Alright, number 5, Hanna-Barbera. Now, I wasn't gonna specifically pick out one Hanna-Barbera character for this. I figured I would just go over all of them. Pretty much all of the main, so, Yogi Bear, Huckleberry Hound, Pixie and Dixie, Mr. Jinx, Space Ghost, Scooby-Doo, Flintstones, Jetsons, just anything Hanna-Barbera. I love Hanna-Barbera to begin with. Y'all should know. I've done 2 videos on my top 12, one for dogs and one for cats. But as in they've been producing Hanna-Barbera comics since at least the late 50s, early 60s, throughout the 70s, 80s, 90s, so there hadn't really been very many comics later on in the early 2000s that pretty much devoted to the earlier Hanna-Barberas, so like Ruff and Reddy and Huckleberry Hound and Quick Draw McGraw and Yogi Bear and stuff like that. Every so often you would catch a little bit of a comic book with them in it. Recently they have started doing a line which I would love to try to own or try to find if I could, which is like a more realistic play on any of the Hanna-Barbera franchises. So they got Scooby-Doo, which takes place like in almost in like an apocalyptic world. Flintstones look more realistic looking instead of cartoony. They got wacky races, but it's called Wacky Land Races, I think, or something like that. I can't remember. And then they also have a line which is gonna devote all mostly like to the superhero. Johnny Quest, Shazam, Herculoid, Space Ghost, all those. Really neat line. Really do love it. Been collecting Hanna-Barbera comics since at least the early 90s. Number 4, The Simpsons. I grew up watching the cartoon, so what else, buying some of the clothes, the shirts, toys whenever they came out. So I didn't really buy much of the Simpson comics though growing up. I did buy the magazines before the comic books actually started coming out. The Bongo company came out, started making them in 1993, but they had a series of Simpson magazines, which started out in the early or late 80s up until about the I think the last one was 1990, and the last one was called Simpson Comics, and so that's kind of where they ended up coming up. It did really well and sold really well that it ended up coming out. I don't have very many. I only have about 2 comics of The Simpsons, and the rest are either Bart Simpson. I don't really have a big collection of the Simpson comics, but still like the show. Don't watch it as much as I used to either, but really good line if y'all want to check that out. Number 3, Uncle Scrooge from Disney. I started collecting Uncle Scrooge comics in about the early 2000s, and these were the thick book ones. I wasn't ever really collecting any of the Uncle Scrooge regular thin papered comics until years later, you know, down the line, I started buying them off of eBay. Sorry about my sweat. Started getting into Uncle Scrooge. I mean, I've always enjoyed him. Always liked his character. DuckTales is what got me into Uncle Scrooge to begin with. That was another line of comics that I collected too, was DuckTales. And really good line. Now, the Uncle Scrooge Adventures, which started coming out in the late 80s, were reissued of any of the older Uncle Scrooge comics back in the early 60s and all that. But it came out in 1987 is whenever those started coming out. And then they started re-releasing other older, and then later on they started coming up with newer Uncle Scrooge adventures and stuff. So I got to grow up on some of the reissued as well as some of the newer ones that came out during the early 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. You know, so really good line. Check it out if you can. They do have the books, the real thick books that are coming out of volumes of Uncle Scrooge. Check those out and you'll be able to check out some of the early comics of Uncle Scrooge. Number 2, Donald Duck. Who else to follow Uncle Scrooge but his nephew? Now, I didn't start collecting Donald Duck till later, you know, 2000s. I did have some Donald Duck comics later, I mean, in the early 90s, but they didn't last very long. They fell apart, and because I would read them so much or take them even in the bathroom, and I'd accidentally, you know, get them wet. Well, then they would, you know, I'd try to dry them, and after a while they just would start to fall apart. But the ones I started reading later on were the Donald Duck Adventures, more reissuing of the old Donald Duck comics from the 60s and early 50s or late 50s. Really good artwork. Carl Barks is a really good artist. I wish he was still around. I'd love to be able to meet him and have him sign some of my comics. You know, he's the one that actually created Uncle Scrooge. He's the one that actually invented Uncle Scrooge. So that's what's real neat about that. But he's the one that kind of took over the comics of Donald Duck. You know, the Donald Duck Adventures, like I said, came out in 1988. So Uncle Scrooge came first, and then, like I said, followed by Donald Duck Adventures, which were the ones I read the most growing up. Before I get to number 1, here's some honorable mentions. Take it away. My number 1 comic that I pretty much I'm not really collecting anymore, any comics. If I do find some, I do still kind of pick up a couple. But my number 1 comic I used to collect as a kid, on up into my early teens and early 20s, was Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic was my favorite video game character. Mario at the moment wasn't. I mean, I still played Mario games, but Sonic was the one that got me into video games. One of the neatest characters. I mean, the comic is still going strong till this day, still being made, so there's still brand new Sonic comics coming out. I do like the earlier Sonic comics more than I do the newer ones, just because, I mean, not due to the artwork. The artwork is fabulous. A bunch of the artists that grew up probably playing the game as well as reading the comics have took over the comic line. It's just, I don't know, I mean, I haven't been able to get back into it. I did start buying those the Super Sonic comics that they started coming out later on, and I think I got like maybe 4 or 5 issues of it, and then I just kind of stopped, you know, and didn't ever. The Reader's Digest that they started coming out, where they started reissuing the older comics of Sonic. The line started coming out in 1993, but it was first started in a miniseries in 1992, which I think it was maybe at the end of the year of 92 into 93 of the little mini issues, and that's where Sonic got its first start of its comics. And it's also still being produced by Archie Comics. Archie Comics is still doing the Sonic the Hedgehog. And they have so many other different lines, you know. They got Knuckles, they had Tails, they had Sally, they had the I can't even think of the name of it's a group of characters that was, you know, a group of other, there was an alligator, a bee, and I can't really think of the chameleon, you know, all those characters, you know. So they've spun off in so many other many of their very own separate comics as well. Well guys, that'll pretty much do it. Leave a comment in below, let me know what is your favorite comic that you grew up reading, or if you still collect them till this day. Let me know, you know, what particular one that you've been reading lately. Tell me something that I might have missed and all that. I'm not very fond of superhero comics unless if it's goofy and comedy. That's just how I am. I'm just not really, not to say I don't like superhero characters, but just never grew up caring for Spider-Man comics or Superman or Batman or Flash or any of those, you know. And I'm not very intellectual, or whatever word I need to be putting right there, of how these characters came to be and where they, you know, and how they are and how they act. But well guys, also check out my Twitter page. I don't post very often, but when I do, you know, give me a like if you can on there, or retweet some of mine. Also, if you want to check out both of my Facebook pages, check out my personal and my YouTube. I'll be posting some of my comics and all that onto my Twitter and my Facebook pages. So, well guys, till next time, it's your VHS Collector Kyle saying, frogs, bears, chickens and things, boys and girls, women and men from all over the world. I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys!